Hello and welcome to our show. In this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of the suspension system in a 4x4 when it comes to off road driving. And for that, we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Clement Allitt from Dobinsons UAE. Dobinsons is a company based in Australia that specializes in springs and suspensions for off road vehicles. So, Mr. Clement, how are you today?
I'm good. What about you?
Good, thank you very much. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with off-roading and what
Okay.
got you to Dubai.
So my name is Clement. I'm originally from France, living now in the UAE for the past 3 years.
Okay.
Um, so I have very special approach about off-roading because I started very young. I grew up in this. My parents do off-road as well. So I started driving myself, my dad's patrol when I was about 12 years old. Then I had my first car, my first old Land Cruiser.
Okay.
When I was 14,
Okay.
where I learned a lot,
Yeah.
did a lot of mistakes,
Okay.
and broke the car a lot.
Okay.
So it's a long-term relationship with
Okay.
off-roading,
Okay.
and I can say it's a passion.
Okay. What kind of terrain were you used to when you started?
Look, in my part of France, I'm from the southwest of France. It's more about sandy tracks. We live along the coast, so sandy tracks, but forest driving. So a lot of routes,
Okay.
sometimes on mud in the winter. So it's totally different kind of terrain that we can face here in UAE.
Okay.
Um, then when I was 18, sorry, I started traveling.
Okay.
So I did a lot of overlanding over Europe, Spain, Portugal, then went to Africa all the way to Senegal. So it's, again, some totally different terrains, some totally different cars and modifications. So again, I learned a lot by myself, and I'm glad today that I can join my passion with my work.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
That's the dream, right?
I don't feel working anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And this part of the world, the desert, this kind of terrain, how different? I mean, I know it's different, but how much better is it? Or you think it's a more challenging?
I can't
Okay.
say it's more challenging. Each terrain has its challenges.
Okay.
When it comes to build a car, so there are different challenges and different approach about off-roading. The thing is, there is a very strong off-road culture, a car culture in general, but a very, very strong off-road culture here in UAE.
Okay.
In the Middle East overall, I would say, but when it comes to UAE, especially Dubai,
Okay.
it is absolutely insane. We got a lot of terrains. It's pretty much free. You can go wherever you want.
Yes.
We do have some rocky terrains, some nice mountains where you can do some nice overlanding trips, camping trips. And we have the dunes, the deserts, so a lot of fun and some incredible cars as well. You can see some crazy builds around.
Yeah.
So that's something you won't get to see anywhere else in the world.
That's true.
I traveled to Australia last year to the head office in Dobinsons, which is in Queensland. I met a couple of guys there. Again, it's a totally different off-road scene, different cars. The guys are pretty much crazy over there as well.
Okay.
So it's just different. And I'm glad today that I got to see a little bit of everywhere.
From different parts of the world today.
Exactly, different terrains, different cultures as well.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Okay. Now, if I was somebody starting out on off-roading, yeah, I just bought my 4x4. I'm thinking about going off-road, and I'm not sure what to do. What should I look out for first, like before going off-road? Like the few things. How do I know if my 4x4 is even capable of, doing a bit of dune driving, dune?
look, first of all, especially here in UAE,
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of people are going on overkill setups
Okay.
from the starts.
Okay.
They always think you need a lot of power to go in the sand, you need big tires, and you get to see a lot of cars
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you want to.
Yeah. So you build up that perception that unless you do that, you don't get to go off road, or you're not capable of going off road.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we keep it basic? Like, for example, we're talking about suspensions today, right? So how important is the suspension now? Every 4x4, like the stock suspension, what comes from the factory, right? Is there a limitation to what the stock suspension can do, and why do we need an upgrade in the first place?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of limitations. The original suspensions are built for reliability,
Yeah.
control of the car. So the cars are pretty much low
Okay.
to keep a good on-road comfort.
Yeah.
They're not built for heavy off-road, especially the kind of terrain that we have here and the way we drive as well.
Yeah.
Dunes in Africa, people are crossing the dunes. It's just we want to get to point B. Here, we're just having fun in the dunes. You want to go fast, you want to do some switches. Oh, yes, it's totally different here.
Yeah.
Now, I would suggest to a newbie, someone who just got his first four drive, start by going out, start by understanding what you really need. Because there are like so many kinds of suspensions, heights, and a little bit why you're planning in the future. Do you feel that you're gonna go off-roading very often?
Okay.
Or it's just like a every once in a while thing?
Okay.
If you go every week, twice a week, for example, like I do, yeah, you do need something that's heavy duty. You know that you're gonna get to a high level, I would say, of driving. So it's good that you choose the right setup right away
Okay.
by saving money.
Okay.
So if you go to the right setup right away, you don't get to do it many times.
Okay.
If you go to something that's gonna be cheap, very basic at first, okay, it's gonna work well for what you do, maybe for a short period.
Okay.
Then after a while, you will want to change it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's very important. The choice of the car is also very important. You need to understand before buying the car, if if you don't already have a car, what should I take, what do I do with the car?
Okay.
So
The utility part of it, right? What do
exactly.
we use it for? Yeah.
And how can I modify it? If your plan is to modify that car, okay, which car shall I buy if I'm planning to do this kind of driving? Am I planning to overland? Am I planning to drive the car as a daily? Is it a family car? Uh, so many things, so many factors are there.
Okay. Okay. So when it comes to upgrading the suspension, do we think about the lift first? Like suspension upgrade would mean a minimum lift, right? In most cases, or do we go with the exact stock height?
No, usually we leave the car for the ground clearance
Okay.
and to, to be able to fit bigger tire size as well. So it's all about, again, choosing the right setup. What are you doing with the car? Okay, a high car, a high lift will look good, but will it suit my kind of driving? And it affects as well the reliability, the on-road driving, and it has to be done properly. When you get to a certain point of lift, in general about 2 inch depending on the cars, then there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. It's not just putting a suspension is a very easy thing.
Okay.
It comes to very special load rates, then driveline adjustments, all the control arms, etc.
Okay.
It has to be a complete thing, complete kit to keep all the reliability, drivability.
Okay. So when it comes, for example, we're talking about ground clearance and you need to lift the car. Now, how much of a lift is possible before which you need to go sideways as well? For example, you put spacers to kind of even out the center of gravity or to make it more stable. Is that something we need to think about?
This is definitely something to think about, especially here in UAE, the way we drive in the dunes. You get to put the car at a very high angle,
Yeah.
at high speeds, make it slide. So the center of gravity is something that is extremely important over here. That's why you don't get to see often cars with more than a 3-inch lift,
Okay.
which, for example, in Australia or in Europe, it is very often everyone has a 4-6-inch lift.
Okay.
This is something that you see often, 37-inch tires,
Okay.
but you get to go over an obstacle.
Okay.
Here it's totally different.
Okay.
So yeah, now again a lot of cars, a lot of different uh, engineering in the way they are done. Some independent suspensions front with a solid axle in the back, then some solid axle front and back. Some are 4 independent suspensions. So everything is different. Some are with core springs, some are with leaf springs, some are with torsion bars. So we get to go
Okay.
step by step.
Okay. So from your experience in this part of the world, like when it comes to desert driving, what kind of suspension do you think works well? Is it an independent suspension, a solid axle, or a combination of both, like independent in the front, solid at the back? What works best in your opinion?
Look, to me, it's a personal opinion
Yeah.
because we are all different. We all have different feelings. Some people will love driving four independent suspensions. Uh, I do like the two solid axles.
Okay.
First of all, for the reliability, the easy way to modify it.
Okay.
So I really do like that rough feeling.
Okay. Okay.
You feel where you put the
Yeah.
wheels.
Now, when it comes to, let's say, rock climbing or something, so if it's a solid axle, so when the car tilts or when it's climbing, the differential at the back or at the front, with the solid axle, it kind of raises the differential as well, right? When the car moves, when the axle moves. But when it's independent, the differential kind of stays in the same place because it's independent, right? The suspension and the differential kind of maintains its same. So isn't it safer to have solid axle in some situations because you get a better lift for the differential keeps it safer? Yeah.
So solid axle, I would say it's safer or not. It's just that with the independent suspension, most of the time, except if you install a long travel kit, which some guys do now with off-road modifications, the solid axle vehicle will always offer you longer travel, suspension travel.
Okay.
Now, in terms of ground clearance, when we talk to solid axle from to a solid axle vehicle, sorry, only the tire size will lift the car.
Yeah.
That's something that people have to understand.
Yeah.
Lifting a solid axle vehicle
Will not
by
improve the ground clearance, right?
no,
It
if
doesn't
you
change
keep the stock tire size on it,
Yeah.
the ground clearance will remain the same.
the same, yeah. Which is not the case in an independent system.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the differentials are fixed into the chassis. Then you get the axle shafts,
Yeah.
giving the power to the wheels. So when you lift the car, you automatically raise the ground clearance a lot,
Yeah.
which makes a very good difference. So this is important. Depending on what you do, this is something to be considered. Now it's often easier to lift a solid axle vehicle. Up to 2-inch for most of the cars that we are talking about, like Y61s, Land Cruiser 80 series, even the 70 series Land Cruisers, the 79, etc. That's something pretty easy to do.
Okay.
That is not much to be done.
Okay. Now, when it comes to desert driving, is it that important that you have more ground clearance than what is available stock, or is it manageable? I mean,
It is good because again there are like different kind of dunes. Here today where we are, the dunes are pretty small and sharp, so you would need some good angles of approach.
Okay.
Uh, then yeah, it's important. But again, having a car too high will raise the center of gravity,
Yes, makes it unsafe.
which is not that good. Again, with the solid axle vehicle, only the tire size will lift
Yeah.
the ground clearance.
And there's a limitation to how much bigger a tire size you can go, right?
Yes, there is a limitation. By putting also big tire size, most of the time you lose reliability. Then you lose a lot of power as well, which we need.
Yeah.
So that's
Yes, so you need to maintain a balance between the weight of the tire and the size, and a lot of factors come into play, right? Because you need to keep the car light as well, as light as possible, while having the traction and all of those things with power. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. What else does the suspension affect for the car? Like, for example, the when you're towing it or load carrying capacity, like uh, many things. Like, for example, if it's overlanding, you need a suspension that could carry a lot of weight, right? When you're camping or overlanding.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start explaining something for the suspension newbies.
Okay.
I get to hear a lot people asking, oh, if I install these shocks, uh, how high will it lift the car? Okay, stop it. Only the coil springs, depending on the car. So coil spring, torsion bar, leaf springs will lift the car and carry the load.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. The shock absorbers, his job is not to carry anything.
Yeah.
Is to control the travels, the movements of the suspension.
So basically, the coil takes all the weight of the car, and the shock smoothens out the whole process of suspension.
Exactly.
Yeah, what this coil is supposed to do, it smoothens it out, right?
Yes,
It doesn't carry any load.
no.
Yeah. So that's
If you can press even a solid shock absorber, most of the time you can press it by hand.
yeah. Okay.
If you do it slowly.
Yeah.
If you do it fast, nothing will happen.
Okay.
So yeah, when it comes to overlanding, towing, it is important to have the right suspension for your car. Now, do you have a variable load or a constant load on your car? You need to know. When you come to buy some car springs, oh, I have some extra weight on the car. I want heavy coils. For example, here in Dobinsons, we have a lot of different coils for each car that I made to carry 0 to 100 kilos or up to 200, 250 kilos, 350 kilos, 500 kilos. But if you tell me, okay, when I go over landing, I have 500 kilos, so I have 500 kilo, I want constant load 500 kilo coil springs. But when you get home, I remove everything, but it's fine, I will drive with it.
Yeah.
No, you cannot.
Okay. Why is that? Why?
The car will be extremely stiff. It will raise the car, first of all, but you will feel driving with no suspension. The coil spring is so strong that the weight of the car will not make it compress.
Okay. Okay. So you need enough weight in the car to compress the spring so that it takes. I mean, it performs as a spring, right?
Yeah,
The other
correct.
case, it does not act like a spring. It's
Yeah.
like a. It's like just keeping a piece of metal. So when you drive it,
Much.
the whole purpose of a suspension.
If you take a big hit, yes, it will move, but it will make the car uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, it will not perform well.
Yes.
Even if you drive on the track, you will get a lot of rebound. You won't get the travel. You need the travel. If you leave the car, is to get also some suspension travel. If you don't get to use it, then there is no point.
Yeah, that's true. So if I have a car like you have your Y61 Nissan Patrol, now if I go to Dobinsons to kind of choose a suspension that I need, does it like come, do you categorize it by car and model and weight, or how is it?
Yeah, we do. So each car model, you start choosing the brand on the catalog. Start choosing the brand, then the model. Of course, there are model specifications here in GCC. Some of the models, especially Nissans, Land Cruisers, are very specific to this region. So we do have the specific parts for it. And we will ask you, the sales team will automatically ask you, what do you do with the car? We need to understand that to give you the right product for you. Do you have any extra load? If you don't know how much extra weight you have, then it is very important to know. Again, if you have 300 kilos and we give you 500 kilo load, then the car will be too high and stiff.
Okay.
But at the contrary, if you have 500 kilos and we give you 350 kilos, the car will be too soft and too low.
Yeah.
So this is important to know.
Okay. So depending on the load that you're going to carry, the springs change, right? Primary is. And would the shocks remain the same, or the shocks also?
Depend to a certain level of load,
Okay.
which is pretty high, to be honest. The shocks will remain the same.
Okay.
There are different categories of shocks. So here in Dobinsons, basically, we have 4 streams of shocks. The basic, which is a twin tube shock, so the oil and the gas are not physically separated. We have an internal monotube reservoir.
Okay.
Internal reservoir monotube, sorry. So the oil and the gas are physically separated, but there are no external reservoir and no adjustments. Then we have the MRA, which is a monotube reservoir adjustable. It's a 3-way adjustable shock, which can be adjusted in high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound.
Okay. So these are all categorized based on the utility on what you're planning to do with the car, yes?
Yes.
So as a buyer, if I was to come to Dobinsons and I look for a shock, it's something that you would recommend to me rather than me looking at something and saying I want that, or like how does it?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely we would recommend something. But again, we're in UAE. You get to see cars everywhere. Yeah. So people will come with something in mind.
Okay.
Even if you explain them, okay, you don't need adjustable shocks
Mm.
because they will not never adjust them.
Okay.
Having adjustable shocks and never adjust them is pointless.
Okay.
There is no use of it.
Okay. So at what point is it overkill? Like you're doing too much for your utility, right? You find that sometimes that happens as well. Is that
It will help, but it's people won't get 100% happy of it.
Yeah.
Because they will complain that okay, the shock is not like this, it's not like that. I mean, it goes up to 45 different positions
Okay.
to it on a 3-way adjustable shock. So yes, you definitely need to play with it and to understand. And I hear very often, okay, send the shocks for me. Okay, my car is different. Even if it's another, I drive a Y61. Even if it's another Y61 Patrol, the car will be different. The tire size will be different. The offset of the rims.
Okay.
The driver as well.
Yeah.
We all like different feelings. So this is very important that each one of the users of adjustable shocks, no matter what's the brand, but you need to adjust it for what you do.
Okay. And when you talk about adjustment, is this something that the user can do by themselves, or they need to bring it into the garage to adjust it, or?
No, it's a very easy thing. It's just a knob on the reservoir, which is accessible from outside of the car. There is it's a very easy fix. I do change my settings sometimes, like like I did in the morning. I was driving on the road all week long as a daily. I keep my shocks on soft setting. Now we came on an off-road track. I just changed, added a few clicks to make the shocks a little bit stiffer. So yes, it's a very
Okay.
easy.
And at what point of the lift, for example, if you go beyond 2 inches of lift, do we need to put spacers for the wheels?
It will again depend on the car. If we take something, I mean, like 2 cars that are pretty similar in conception, um, taking a Patrol Y60, Y61, no matter what, and a Toyota S70 series, for example. Both cars will have 2 solid axles. The main difference with the 70 series Land Cruiser is that the rear axle will be on the leaf spring suspension, not on core spring. But the conception make the car having a high center of gravity out from the factory, which the Patrol doesn't have. It has actually a very low center of gravity and very wide axles, whereas the 70 series has narrow axles.
Okay, so you
So it
don't
makes
need
it
it on the Patrol most of the time.
exactly.
And
It makes a huge difference.
yes, yes. And when it comes to leaf springs, I mean, they're completely different concept of suspension, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to off-roading, I think leaf springs are more suited for very high load capacities, right? But
They were used for that.
yeah,
They are still used for that, as you rightly said, on trucks. on the pickups as well.
Why do we still see them on some SUVs, like for example the Land Cruiser, the older series?
For example, the 70 series, even if you take a Hilux nowadays or some other pickups, then they are still on leaf springs because it is a utility vehicle, as the Australians call it a ute. Yeah, it is a utility vehicle. It is made to carry load. So the leaf springs will give a good strength and also will divide the points of load on the chassis. By having the coil spring, all the load will go on that
It's
coil.
centered, more centered, and the other one's more spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It will go on 2 points.
Okay. And are these interchangeable? Like if I had leaf springs, could I just take them off and put coil springs instead?
There are some modification kits that we don't provide because it most of the time requires welding on the chassis,
And
which
it
is
defeats the purpose. It's not.
it's a very heavy modification to do.
Yeah.
Some guys do it. I wouldn't recommend to do it. You want a coil spring vehicle, just go and buy a coil spring vehicle.
Okay. Okay. So if I was to choose a suspension that I would do 50% off-road, 50% on the road because I need it for work and for my weekend off-roading. So Dobinsons does offer those kind of solutions as well, right? Something that's a mix of the two.
That's where to me the adjustable shocks have the more sense here anyway, because most of the people, as I do, I drive my car as a daily, also off-road with it. I want it to be comfortable on road.
Yeah.
We drive a lot. We spend a lot of time on the road here in anyway, and but when it comes to off-road,
Yeah.
I want it to perform.
Yeah.
And I don't want to drive a boat. So yeah, the adjustments makes a huge difference. Now, depending on your level of off-roading, if you call off-roading, going out with the family, having some few camping trips in the mountains or drive on flat areas as we have here, don't do some crazy things in the dunes, then maybe some adjustable shocks would be overkill.
Okay. That's true. At what point does the stock suspension or what comes from the factory, at what point does a person feel that it's not enough? And it's like we said before, it's mostly the load and the ground clearance.
There is something also that is very well known from off-roaders, is called bottoming out.
Yeah.
This is something, especially again here in that region, that you will hear a lot. Oh, my suspension is bottoming out. Yes, it does. The shocks are soft. The engineers who create those cars, they don't make this car to be like a race car. Okay, so yes, the suspension is soft. It is made to go off-road, but it's not made to be driven like a race car.
Yeah.
So there is that feeling of bottoming out. Bottoming out, for the people who doesn't know, it's when the suspension completely compresses and reach the bump stop. So you will feel a big hit.
Okay.
So having a stronger shock absorber, no matter what it is, will control that movement.
Okay.
Will make it slower.
Okay.
On a small bump, you will also feel your suspension is stiffer.
Okay.
But when it comes to a big hit, then it makes a huge difference.
So mostly in desert driving, like which you don't find in rocky areas or mud, you find that you might be jumping off dunes or landing in a very tricky situations, or you might intentionally jump off dunes just to have fun. In such cases, obviously the stock suspension is not going to be of much help, right?
No.
So you need something a lot more robust to take the impact of a jump because the entire weight of the car plus the fall and everything.
Yes, definitely. Having a good suspension will allow you to go over an obstacle faster while being in total control of the car. Of course, there is a limit to it. The car has a limit, the driver has a limit, everything has a limit. But Yeah, it will allow you.
Yeah.
to go
So
faster.
even from a safety perspective, it's always good if you find yourself doing a lot of off-roading or frequently, for even if it's a once in a week kind of thing, it's always better to upgrade the suspension.
It is. It is very important. Now there is a second thing about modified suspension, especially shock absorbers now. When we come to off-road driving, if you drive slow and very short drives, or if you do long drives and very intense, there are some different things to understand. There is a thing called cavitation.
Okay. Can you explain what exactly cavitation is and how it plays a role in the whole system?
Okay, I will start from the beginning. How does a shock absorber work?
Yes.
There are different kinds of shock absorber, as I already said. Twin tube, IMS, MRA are our three main
Okay, so you have
three of IMS, internal monotube,
internal monotube suspension.
and the MRA, which is a monotube reservoir system. Twin tube suspension, the main piston will be pretty small compared to a monotube, because the outer tube that you see is basically the reservoir.
Okay.
And inside of that one, there is a smaller tube where the main piston is.
Okay.
Completely, that main cylinder is completely filled of oil. Then there is a bypass that goes in the secondary tube, where the oil and the gas are not physically separated.
Okay.
Okay. That's why if you come to drive very hard on these shocks, we say they will come to over it, because the oil flow, by being shaked a lot, oil and gas can mix. The gas can go in the main piston, and the pressure of gas inside is not that much. It is a extremely reliable shock, which is being used also for armored cars. But when it comes to racing application, say, it is not suitable. Even though back in the days, if you followed the story of rally racing, for example, the Dakar Rally, they were driving with these shocks. Everything was going well.
Yeah.
So it works. But nowadays we got some technologies that they didn't have that work so much back. Now the internal reservoir monotube, from outside there is only one tube, which is basically the cylinder as well. So you get inside a floating piston, which will physically separate the gas, nitrogen, and the oil. So you put nitrogen pressure inside, about 180 to 200 psi, to compress the oil, to avoid what we call the cavitation. Because if you release the gas, the oil is basically, when you mix some water or whatever you do, some bubbles will come inside.
Yes.
If these bubbles comes to be created inside the shock by using it, those bubbles will go first through the main piston, through the valving, and so you lose the shocks. This is why it is also very important.
Okay.
Now, why the external reservoir shocks were created at first, I hear a lot of stories around, so it's funny, and I want to say it is not for heat dissipation. It is not for a lot of things, because when it was created, there were no adjustments on the time. So it is to get the full travel of the shock, because when you get the go back to the internal reservoir, yes, the IMS shock, you need to limit the travel, because what you don't want to happen is that the main piston comes in contact with the floating piston.
Oh, yeah.
Where the oil and the gas would mix.
So that's why you have the reservoir to...
The reservoir, so you get the full length of the body that you see outside fixed on the car is actually your shock travel.
So you get more travel by keeping the reservoir separate.
Exactly.
Yeah. But now today, with these adjustments that you're talking about...
Exactly. Now, after years of development, research, etc., we have adjusters. So the compression adjusters are on the reservoir.
Okay.
Now, when the rebound adjuster is on the shaft, that's why the shaft is very big from outside,
Yeah.
because it is drilled inside. There is a flow of oil going inside. It's a very, very specific
Yeah.
product.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's true. So now, if someone wanted to buy Dobinson suspension or get an upgrade, where do we find you? Like, where are you located?
You can find us on Google Maps,
Okay.
Waze, by putting Dobinsons Middle East,
Okay.
Dobinson Spring and Suspension.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to find.
And is your product range online as well?
Yeah, we do have a website, which is the general website from Dobinsons.
Okay.
From Australia, we are creating the local website at the moment, so it will be online pretty soon. Then you can just call us, check the availability, and get all the information you need.
Yeah, that's great. Anyway, thanks a lot, Clement. It was great. That was a lot of useful information, especially the basics, so that our viewers get an idea of what the whole thing about suspension is. So thanks a lot. It was great to have you on the show.
All the pleasure was for me.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.